You should be happy for your sister, Natalie, my mother said, her voice painted with that silky, hollow kindness I'd grown up choking on. The North Carolina sun shimmered off the metallic blue paint of the brand new BMW parked in my parents' driveway. My sister, Brooke, squealed as she circled it like it was her newborn. I stood quietly on the cracked stone path, squinting in disbelief. I'm Natalie, 26, a senior logistics manager at a firm headquartered in uptown Charlotte. For the past 2 years, I've been silently paying my parents' bills, mortgage, utilities, even their health insurance premiums. Frank and Diane, my father and mother, are technically retired, but in practice, they rely on me to keep the lights on. Every single month. What they didn't know or didn't care to ask was that I've sacrificed vacations, skipped social events, and delayed buying my own place, just to keep their world spinning. And now, here I was, watching them gift an $85,000 BMW to my younger sister, Brooke, as if they'd saved for years to surprise her. Here you go, National. My dad handed me an envelope. No bow, no card, just a thin rectangle of paper that flopped in my hand. I opened it. Inside was a $60 Whole Foods gift card. I looked at the card. Then at the BMW. Then at Brooke, who was already posting on Instagram with hashtags like #blessed and #daddisgirl. Can you believe it? She laughed, slipping into the driver's seat like she was sliding into a designer dress. My co-workers are going to lose it when I pull into the spa lot tomorrow. She worked part-time at a luxury spa in South End. That gig barely covered her rent, definitely not the insurance premiums on a luxury car. She's been under so much pressure lately, my mother said, watching her like she was royalty. She needs something nice to keep her motivated. I pressed the gift card between my fingers, feeling it bend. I could have asked why Brooke's half-hearted retail shifts were celebrated while my 60-hour workweeks were just expected. But what was the point? I smiled and lied through my teeth. Thank you. That's thoughtful. We had a family barbecue planned that afternoon, but it felt more like a coronation. Brooke was the main event, the rest of us just props. My parents set up a banner, congratulations, Brooke, and even baked her a cake. I hadn't had a cake with my name on it since high school. I sat quietly through the meal, sipping from a lukewarm soda while Brooke told the story of how she almost chose an Audi but thought it was too flashy. She talked about leather seat conditioning, custom tinting, and weekend trips she hadn't even planned yet. No one batted an eye. Not once did anyone mention whose credit got approved for that BMW. Mine. Not once did anyone thank me for the down payment I'd made 6 months ago when our parents needed a reliable car for emergencies. Not once did anyone remember who co-signed the loan because their credit scores were too low. It was my name on the registration. My name on the insurance policy. My money disappearing into the illusion of generosity they wrapped around Brooke like a ribbon. I should have said something then. Should have snapped. But I didn't. I just watched Brooke drape herself across the hood of the car while our dad fired up the grill, beaming with pride, as if she had done anything to earn that smile. And I realized something. This wasn't about a car. This was about erasure. It always had been. By the time we moved from the driveway to the backyard, Brooke was already making calls about custom rims. I'm thinking matte black with silver accents, she said, scrolling through options on her phone. Oh. And maybe the steering wheel cover with Swarovski crystals. I saw one on TikTok, it's super chic. My father, Frank, chuckled like she had just delivered the punchline of the year. You always had good taste, baby girl. I stood off to the side of the patio, beside a plastic table sagging under a bowl of potato salad and 2 unopened bottles of cheap wine. I stirred my iced tea with the straw, too numb to drink it. The conversations around me blurred into background noise, Brooke's giddy screeching, Mom fussing over chicken on the grill, and cousins laughing in distant pockets of the yard. I didn't feel present. I felt like a stranger at a party I was paying for. And then, Brooke said something that snapped everything into sharp focus. I need to schedule a detailing next week, she announced, tossing her long hair over one shoulder. And maybe install Apple CarPlay. The system's good but, like, not influencer good, you know? You should definitely keep it in top shape, my mother Diane agreed. It's a beautiful gift. Just like you deserve. That was it. No mention of who made the down payment. No mention of the 5-year loan with my signature on every page. No mention of the fact that their retirement income couldn't even cover basic property taxes, let alone a luxury vehicle. I set down my tea slowly and said, I should probably get going. Frank looked up from the grill, confused. Already? Cake's still inside. I glanced toward the kitchen, where I'd noticed the cake earlier. A gaudy white and pink thing with cursive frosting. So proud of you, Brooke. Yeah. I've got some things to do tonight, I lied. I picked up my bag, swung it over my shoulder, and walked toward the cars. Brooke was still on her phone, talking loudly about a girl's trip to Asheville. I walked right up to her and held out my hand. Can I get the BMW keys real quick? I need to move it to get out. She didn't even blink. Just tossed them at me with a distracted, yeah, sure, babe, as she kept scrolling. No suspicion. No hesitation. Frank had turned his back again, distracted by some smoke from the grill. Diane had gone inside. No one noticed as I slid into the BMW, adjusted the seat, and reversed smoothly out of the driveway. I didn't go far at first, just down the block, making a casual left onto a residential street. But when I reached the light and turned onto the main road, I kept going. I didn't know where I was headed, but I knew exactly what I was doing. I drove straight back to my apartment building in Uptown Charlotte. 20 minutes of silence, just me, the engine, and the voice in my head finally saying, enough. I parked in my assigned underground spot. Locked the doors. Carried the keys upstairs. Only then did I check my phone. 4 missed messages from Brooke. 1. Where'd you go with my car? 2. 3. Dad's asking when you're coming back. 4. 5. Hello. 6. 7. This isn't funny. 8. It took me a full minute to realize I was smiling. I took a long, hot shower, letting the water pound against my back like the last 2 years had just been rinsed away. I made dinner real food, not barbecue scraps, then curled up on the couch with a book and a glass of wine. Outside, the city skyline glittered against the night like a challenge. My phone buzzed again. Now it was Frank. Voicemail 1. Natalie, this has gone far enough. You need to bring the car back. This is ridiculous. Voicemail 2. If you don't return that vehicle tonight, I'm going to have to report it stolen. You hear me? Stolen. I didn't respond. I didn't panic. I just let it sit. Then came the third voicemail. This time, Frank sounded more confused than angry. Natalie. Your mother and I were going through some of the paperwork, and, there seems to be a mistake. You better call us back. Soon. A mistake? No, Dad. That was the only accurate thing about this entire situation. Because what they had just realized, what I had known from the beginning, was that the BMW wasn't just parked in my garage. It was mine. The loan was in my name. The insurance under my policy. The registration and title issued to my address. Every monthly payment came directly out of my bank account. They never asked how or why. They just assumed. Like they always had. Around 8 p.m., I finally called back. Frank picked up immediately. Thank God. Natalie, where are you? We need to talk about this car. I'm at home, I said, calm as ever. There's nothing to talk about. The BMW is parked in my garage. Safely. It's not yours, he shouted. We gave it to your sister for her birthday. With what money? I asked. Your pension? Mom's non-existent job? Or was it Brooke's spa paycheck? Silence. Then Diane's voice in the background, rapid, panicked, barely intelligible. I continued, voice even and sharp, let me be clear. I bought that car. My name is on every document. You wanted a luxury vehicle? I made it happen. But that doesn't make it yours. And it damn sure doesn't make it Brooke's. I ended the call before they could regroup and spin another excuse. Because that's what they always did. Rewrite the story until they came out looking like the heroes. Not this time. The next morning, I woke up to 27 unread messages. 5 from Brooke. 14 from Diane. The rest were split between Frank and unknown numbers I could only guess were aunts, cousins, maybe even family friends brought into the fold to mediate. I didn't read any of them. I didn't need to. I knew the tone by heart: guilt, confusion, fake concern, backdoor threats. It was their favorite genre. I got dressed for work, slipping into my blazer like it was armor. My job as a senior logistics manager at a supply chain firm in Charlotte required precision and structure. Funny how I could build systems and fix international shipping disasters, yet I couldn't repair my own family's broken spine. At the office, I ran the morning meeting like nothing had happened. My colleague Marcus raised an eyebrow after I presented the Q4 operation overhaul with what he later called nuclear-level energy. "You seem different today," he said with a smile. "I think I finally read the fine print on a contract I never agreed to," I replied. He laughed, not realizing I was dead serious. At lunch, I called my bank. I knew the details already, I'd lived them, but I wanted to hear it again. The BMW loan was in my name, insured through my account, registered at my address, and every payment had come from my checking account. Legally, there was no ambiguity. Emotionally, that's where it gets messy. My phone buzzed. Brooke. I don't know why I answered. Curiosity, maybe. Natalie. Her voice was tight, hoarse, like she'd been crying all night, which wouldn't have surprised me. What's going on? Why did you take my car? I leaned back in my chair, crossed one leg over the other. It's not your car, Brooke. It never was. What are you talking about? Her voice cracked. Mom and Dad gave it to me for my birthday. Everyone saw them give me the keys. They gave you keys to a car they don't own, I replied, still calm. That BMW has been paid for with my money, my credit, my signature. I've been paying their mortgage, their bills, their entire lifestyle. And that car? That was just one more thing they took from me and handed to you with a smile like they were the ones making sacrifices. She was quiet. For a moment, I wondered if she had hung up. Then, I didn't know. No, I said. You never cared to know. The line went silent again. I could hear her breathing, shallow, shaky. So what happens now? Now? I stood and looked out the 18th floor window, the skyline stretching like a challenge. Now you and Mom and Dad get to learn what life looks like without my money behind it. That evening, the knock came. I knew who it would be. I even left the door unlocked because I wanted them to walk in and see the life I had built when I wasn't busy carrying theirs. Diane and Frank entered like awkward guests at a party they hadn't been invited to. They stood in my living room, taking in the glass-top tables, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the art prints they'd never seen before. "I didn't realize you were living like this," Diane said finally. "You never asked," I replied. Frank got straight to the point. "Natalie. This whole car thing, it's gotten out of hand. Jessica, Brooke is devastated. She's embarrassed. You've made your point. But can we talk about solutions now?" "There's no point to make," I said, sitting on the armrest of my chair. "The BMW is mine. That's not a stunt. It's a correction." Diane wrung her hands like she was praying. "We never meant to hurt you. We thought we were just borrowing your help. You always seemed so capable. So, fine." I almost laughed. Fine. I'd been emotionally invisible for decades. Being capable had become a survival mechanism, not a compliment. "And while you were borrowing my help," I asked, "did you ever think about the cost to me?" Frank shifted. "We're your parents." "No," I said. Your people who used your daughter's kindness to fund your fantasy retirement. You told her she was lucky to have a family. You made her pay to belong. Diane flinched. That's not fair. What's not fair, I said, is giving Brooke an $85,000 car that I financed, and handing me a $60 grocery card like a tip for being your unpaid sponsor. Frank looked suddenly very tired. He sat down and buried his face in his hands. Diane, for once, had no rehearsed lines to fall back on. I have receipts, I said, lifting a folder from the end table. Bank statements. Loan documents. 2 years of financial paper trails. If you need help remembering how deep this goes. They didn't open it. They didn't need to. Is there anything we can say? Diane whispered. Yes, I said. You can say thank you. And then you can figure out how to live on your own for once. Brooke texted me that night. Are you really going to just keep the car? I didn't reply. Because she still didn't get it. This wasn't about the car. This was about every time my accomplishments were overlooked while hers were celebrated. About the nights I sat alone in my apartment wondering if love had to be earned through utility. About the way Diane always turned conversations into comparisons, and Frank deflected everything with fake jokes and feigned confusion. It was about being erased while being used. And for the first time in my life, I had no intention of disappearing. The morning after our confrontation, I got up early, brewed a pot of coffee, and opened my bank app. It wasn't a routine check, it was a reckoning. I tallied up every payment I had made over the last 24 months, the $2,100 mortgage transfers, the $700 car payments, the utilities, the surprise medical bills they'd quietly forwarded to me when Frank had a minor outpatient surgery. Total: $61,438.79. I took a screenshot and emailed it to myself with the subject line, "Proof of devotion." Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I turned off my phone. No texts. No calls. No more manipulative guilt spirals. Just silence. When I arrived at work, my co-workers were buzzing about the quarterly review. Normally, I'd be laser-focused. That day, I sat in the meeting half-present. Not because I didn't care, but because for the first time, my mind was full of my life. What did I want? Not what Brooke needed. Not what Frank and Diane expected. Me. By the end of the day, I had my answer. I wanted freedom. That night, I went home and opened a document titled, Exit Strategy. The unraveling started that weekend. Apparently, Brooke had finally told her friends the truth, or at least part of it. By Sunday, her Instagram was scrubbed of all photos of the BMW. The TikToks flexing my new baby's smiling face with heart-shaped eyes were deleted. In their place, a single black and white selfie with a cryptic caption. Sometimes people take what isn't theirs and call it justice. Karma is just a word bitter people hide behind. No tags. No comments allowed. I knew exactly who that was aimed at. It didn't bother me. What bothered me was how easily she played the victim, even now. But the story was starting to leak. Mutual friends began asking questions. My cousin Alicia texted me, "Hey, just checking in. Heard something happened with the car. Everything okay?" I didn't respond. Because what do you say when people finally realize the princess in the castle was sitting on a throne made of someone else's credit score? Monday night, I finally picked up when Diane called. "Natalie," she began, in that low, brittle tone that signaled she'd spent hours rehearsing her next line. "We've talked about things. And we understand now. You've done so much. More than we ever realized." "That's true," I said. I kept my voice steady. I wanted no room for misinterpretation. "And I'm done." She went quiet for a long moment. Then, "What do you mean, done?" "I mean the free ride's over, Mom. You and Dad need to make your own mortgage payment this month. And every month after that. Same for the utilities. The car insurance. The groceries. The streaming services. All of it. But we can't afford it right now, she snapped, dropping the performance mask. Frank's blood pressure is up again. You're putting your father under stress. That's not mine to carry anymore, I replied. You chose to build your comfort on my sacrifices. Now you get to rebuild without me. Diane tried bargaining. What about a compromise? Maybe just the house payments? Or part of the car? The car's not yours, I reminded her. The house isn't either. Not if you can't afford it. Then she dropped the guilt bomb she'd been holding. And what about Brooke? She's devastated. Do you really want your sister riding the bus to work? People are starting to talk. I nearly laughed. Oh no. Not the horror of public transportation. Maybe she can take the bus and think about how someone else funded her fairy tale. Diane didn't respond. I could hear her breathing, sharp and rattled like a pressure cooker about to blow. I didn't make this mess, Mom, I said. I just stopped cleaning it up. I hung up. For the first time, I didn't feel guilty. The fallout came fast. By Thursday, Brooke had posted a blurry Instagram story, clearly filmed from inside a city bus, with the caption, "Some people will do anything for attention. Even sabotage their own family broken heart. It was transparent. Petty. But her followers didn't know the whole story. Just that the BMW was gone and she was suddenly struggling. I ignored it. I had no intention of participating in her curated tragedy. But the damage was done. I started getting passive-aggressive texts from family friends and relatives. Maybe you two should just talk. Don't let pride ruin your family. She's your little sister. She looked up to you. All of it missed the point. Brooke hadn't looked up to me. She looked past me. The same way Diane and Frank had. I wasn't the hero in their story. I was the supporting character. The dependable one. The ATM with a heartbeat. Well, the ATM was out of service. By the following Monday, the mortgage bounced. Frank called me at work, voice tight with panic. Natalie, we need to talk. I'm at work, I cut in. I can't talk. But the bank. You'll figure it out, I said, and hung up. He called back 5 more times. I let each one go to voicemail. When I got home, I found another message, this time from Brooke. So what now? You just want us to be homeless? It was almost funny. The dramatics. The assumption that without me, the world would collapse. They had never imagined a scenario where I simply stepped away. But that's exactly what I had done. A week later, Diane emailed me a screenshot of a Zillow listing. Their house was up for sale. Price dropped 3 times in 5 days. Clearly, they were desperate. The guilt tried to rise in my chest, but I didn't let it. I reminded myself, I gave them 2 years to change. They used those years to spoil Brooke and forget me. I'm not the villain. I'm just not their scapegoat anymore. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, turned off my phone again, and looked around my apartment. It was quiet. Beautiful. Completely mine. I thought about the girl who had signed her name on a loan to help her parents, thinking it was temporary, thinking she was doing the right thing. That girl was gone. The woman in her place had learned something far more valuable than how to balance bills and expectations. Love that demands your silence isn't love, it's leverage. The knock came on a Friday evening, just after 7. It wasn't hesitant. It was confident, rhythmic. Not the kind of knock that belonged to a delivery guy or someone who wanted to be polite. This knock said, "You will answer me." I stood still for a second in my kitchen, wine glass in hand, pasta water boiling behind me. I already knew who it was. Not which one, just one of them. And I was right. When I opened the door, Brooke stood there, lips pressed tightly together, shoulders squared like she'd practiced this moment in the mirror. She looked different without the usual polish. No heels. No lashes. No carefully curled hair. Just flats, jeans, and a slightly wrinkled hoodie that belonged to someone else, probably our dad. "Can I come in?" she asked, voice low. I didn't say yes. I just stepped aside. She walked into my apartment like she was stepping onto another planet. Her eyes lingered on the canvas art over the couch, the espresso machine on my counter, the balcony with a perfect view of the Charlotte skyline. I wondered if she was still hunting for evidence that I wasn't suffering, that I hadn't crumbled without the family's approval. "Nice place," she said finally. "You've been here before," I replied. "Not really," she shrugged. "Last time was when you moved in. You didn't even have furniture yet." "I didn't back then," I said. "Most of my money was going to Mom and Dad." Brooke winced. I watched it ripple across her face like a sudden wind, guilt, irritation, maybe even a pinch of shame. She sat down on the edge of my couch, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to take up too much space. "I came to talk," she said. "Not to fight." I poured a second glass of wine and handed it to her without a word. She held it, looked down into the glass like the answers might float to the top. "You made your point," she said. "Loud and clear." "Did I?" I asked. She looked up at me. "You hurt them." I leaned against the counter. "No, Brooke. I disappointed them. And in this family, that's worse than betrayal." She sipped the wine. Grimaced. "You still drink dry reds?" "They taste like clarity," I said. She set the glass down and folded her hands. "I didn't know everything you were doing. I knew you helped with bills. I didn't know it was that much." "That's the thing, isn't it?" I said, crossing my arms. Nobody asked. Nobody ever wondered how two retired parents with mediocre pensions could afford a luxury lifestyle. You all just enjoyed the spoils and called it luck. Brooke didn't argue. She just stared at the floor. "I didn't ask for the BMW," she said after a long pause. "They offered. And you took it," I said. "With no questions." She looked up, jaw tight. "You think I've had it easy my whole life?" "Yes," I said bluntly. "I do." She blinked. That caught her off guard. I didn't let up. "You've been treated like the crown jewel since we were kids. When I aced my finals, they called me intense. When you passed algebra with a C+, they threw a dinner party. You've always been celebrated for showing up. I've had to bleed to be seen." She swallowed hard. "I didn't ask for that." "No," I said. "But you never gave it back, either." The silence between us settled like a second ceiling. Finally, Brooke stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the skyline. "I moved back in with them," she said. "I figured," I replied. "They're panicking. House hasn't sold. The mortgage is eating them alive. Utilities got shut off for half a day last week." "I'm not surprised," I said. "They're trying to refinance, but their credit's shot," she added. "And I think Dad is scared." "Good. Let him be," I thought. But I said nothing. "I didn't come here to beg," she said, turning to face me. "I came here because I needed to say something. And I wanted to do it sober. Without Mom and Dad around. Just me." I nodded, arms still crossed. "Go ahead." She walked toward the counter, resting her hands on it the way she used to when we were kids, when she wanted to borrow something and pretend it was mutual. "I've been a brat," she said. "My whole life, honestly. I thought the world revolved around me. And they made sure it did. But that's not an excuse. It's just how I got here." I didn't speak. Let the silence stretch. "I can't pay for that car," she said. "Not now. Not ever. The payments are more than I make in a week. I can't afford rent. Can't even keep up with my phone bill without overdrafting. And you know what the worst part is?" I raised an eyebrow. I thought the BMW made me special. I thought it meant I'd finally earned something. But the second you took it back, I realized none of it was real. The attention, the praise, the followers. All of it was built on something you paid for. My chest tightened, not with pity. With something heavier. Grief. Not for her. For me. For the version of me that had spent decades pouring energy into a family system that would never reciprocate. For the girl who thought being good would lead to being loved. For the woman who thought responsibility would eventually lead to respect. Brooke walked back to the couch and sat down again. I'm not here to ask for the car back. I don't want it. I studied her carefully. What do you want? She met my eyes. I want to start over. Not with them. With you. I waited. I want to know who you are outside of what they told me to believe, she continued. I want to understand why you're angry. And I want to be someone who sees you, not just someone who takes from you. It hit me then. She was telling the truth. Maybe for the first time in her life. But I'd learned something, too. Forgiveness without accountability is just another way to stay small. I appreciate that, I said. But it'll take more than one wine night and a heartfelt speech. She nodded. I figured. We sat in silence for a while. Two sisters. Two products of the same broken machine. One learning how to stop taking. The other learning how to stop giving away pieces of herself just to be visible. As Brooke stood to leave, she turned to me and asked quietly, "Do you think they'll make it?" "You mean the house?" I asked. She nodded. "I think they'll survive," I said. "But they won't be comfortable." She hesitated at the door. "And us?" "I guess that depends on who you become when you're no longer their favorite." She left without another word. And for the first time, the silence felt clean. 3 weeks passed without a single call from my parents. Not a text. Not an email. Not even a passive-aggressive emoji from Diane or a vague forwarded article about what happens to ungrateful daughters. I wish I could say I felt triumphant. I didn't. I felt weightless. Not in a liberating way, but like someone had cut the rope tethering me to earth, and I was still trying to figure out where gravity had gone. I had spent so long orbiting them around their needs, their mortgage deadlines, their car fantasies, their emotional blind spots, that I'd never really considered what came after. This was after. And I didn't know what to do with it. On Saturday morning, I found myself cleaning the windows of my apartment. I wasn't expecting anyone. There was no inspection. But something about clearing the glass felt symbolic, like I was finally letting the world in without the fog of guilt distorting it. The sky over Charlotte was clear, cloudless. People jogged below, walking their dogs, laughing over lattes. I had spent years watching life from inside someone else's burden. Now, for the first time, the door was open. I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. Budget spreadsheet, updated. Savings account, growing. Loan tracker, the BMW was 2 years away from being paid in full. I smiled at the thought. Not because I cared about the car anymore, but because it had become something else entirely. A monument to the moment I said, no more. Then I did something radical. I booked a trip. 2 weeks in Lisbon. Solo. I didn't call anyone. Didn't ask for permission. Didn't explain. Just clicked confirm. When the confirmation email hit my inbox, I didn't feel fear. I felt my pulse. 2 days before the trip, my phone rang. It was Frank. I stared at the name. For a long time, I didn't move. Then, finally, I answered. "Hey," he said, voice lower than I remembered. Older. Tired. "It's me." "I can see that," I replied. A pause. Then, "Can we talk?" I considered. Then nodded, forgetting he couldn't see me. "Fine." We met at a diner near Midtown. Not their favorite. Not mine. Just neutral ground. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically, but emotionally. Like someone who'd had his authority quietly repossessed. "I'm not gonna sugarcoat it," he said as soon as we sat down. "We're not doing well." "Financially?" I asked. He nodded. "The house is in escrow. We'll walk away with barely anything. Might be enough for a few months of rent, but that's it." "Sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. He shifted uncomfortably. "Your mom, she still doesn't get it. She thinks you're punishing us." "I'm not," I said. I just stopped sacrificing myself. He looked down at his hands. We were wrong. I didn't respond. He kept going. You helped us. More than we deserved. And when you finally asked for respect, we treated it like betrayal. Still, I said nothing. Because sometimes silence is a test. Finally, he looked up. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want to say thank you. Properly. No guilt. No manipulation. Just, thank you. I studied his face. It was the first time in years he wasn't performing a role. Not the father. Not the provider. Just a man who'd finally realized his oldest daughter wasn't a backup plan. You're welcome, I said softly. He nodded, eyes glassy. I'm sorry, too. For everything. We didn't hug. There were no dramatic tears. Just two people in a booth, learning how to exist without history dragging at their ankles. The day I flew out to Lisbon, Brooke texted. Hope the trip is everything you deserve. I'm rooting for you. I sent her a single heart emoji. No words. We weren't healed. Not fully. But something was growing in the space where resentment had lived. Lisbon was breathtaking. The food, the people, the architecture that hummed with history. But what I remember most is the silence of walking unfamiliar streets alone and realizing I didn't owe anyone an explanation for my happiness. One night, standing at the edge of the Tagus River, I thought of Diane. I thought of the way she used to brush my hair in silence when I was little, the rare quiet moments when love wasn't tied to comparison or sacrifice. I wondered if she was still angry. I wondered if she missed me. I didn't reach out. Because sometimes, love needs distance to learn how to breathe without choking. When I returned, the first thing I saw in my inbox was a letter. Not an email. A scanned handwritten letter. From Diane. It read, Natalie, I've spent my whole life trying to be the glue that held our family together. But now I realize I used guilt like cement. I built walls instead of bridges. I won't ask you to come back. I won't pretend we deserve your help again. I just want you to know I see you now. And I hope someday, when you're ready, we can sit across a table and talk like equals. Not like mother and daughter. But like two women who are trying. Love, always. Mom. I stared at the screen for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just breathed. Because for the first time, she wasn't asking. She was offering. And that changed everything.